Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Benjamin Hawes of the Hawes Financial Group, and our mission is to help you align your personal values, vision, and wealth through what we know about financial planning and investing, which takes a personalized planning process. We're going to talk today about building a more confident retirement. And before getting started, I would like to give a little context for what we're going to go through today, because we may view how to go about this differently than some other planners, simply because philosophically, we operate under a couple different principles. First, we believe that wealth management is a process. It's going to require time, focus, discipline, simply because things change, you change, relationships change, the world around us changes. So plans need to be able to adapt. Second, we believe that how you think and feel about money is at the center and should be at the center of a planning process. So understanding who you are, what matters most to you, what you're passionate about and value most is a key component here. And third, planning informs investments and not the other way around. We believe that how you should be allocating your savings is really important, but you can't start there. And we'll go through some of that today. So let's jump right into the topic. We put this presentation together because we know that pre-retirees have some common concerns that are really important to combat as they enter this phase of life. Here are some of those concerns that I frequently receive when talking with clients. Many feel they're going to outlive their savings or could. They're worried about what stock market volatility and inflation could mean to their savings over time. Many baby boomers don't feel confident that they're going to have enough money to handle healthcare costs in retirement and those rising costs. Many over the age of 65 may require long-term care. They're fearful that they're living longer. God forbid that health and aging is actually a negative. And certainly how to recreate their paycheck, that changing landscape of where income is going to come from, can create some anxiety too. And it's not all just financial, health, family, purpose, finances. There's a couple different pillars that we'll hit on a little bit today. So from my perspective, these concerns are certainly understandable. People are living longer, which means they need to preserve more and save more. Significantly fewer people are retiring with a pension, which is going to put the burden of savings back to them to not only save, but invest wisely. And we've seen a lot of change over these last couple of years, just with interest rates being able to generate income in retirement, or how inflation and recent inflation has been elevated and how that affects your ability to spend. So perhaps you share in some of these concerns. If so, I'm glad you're tuning into this presentation. We're going to address these concerns, and we do so by really building a plan, a process here that is aimed to key in on these 6 key risks, because survey results show, the Retirement Confidence Survey that comes out every year, that only 1 in 5 Americans feel very confident about their ability to have enough money to live comfortably throughout retirement. That's a small number. That means 80% of you are truly very concerned about healthcare needs, unexpected events that can pop up, market volatility, living a long and healthy life, inflation, and how much money you pull out. So let's build the framework to address those things. And in doing so, hope that confidence that you would have begins to increase as you enter what should be an exciting phase of life. So here's the plan. And here's what we'll do in this presentation. With those risks front of mind, we're going to share our 6-part process to helping create a more confident retirement. And that begins with a conversation on what retirement really means to you, right? It's important to have a vision for how you're going to spend your time. If work isn't occupying, 40 to 50 hours a week, what are you going to do all day? We'll discuss our process for how to consider some of that, and encourage you to keep your answers to those questions front of mind as we go through the other 5 steps. Second step, let's consider your time horizon, both the time you have between now and your official retirement, but then also throughout the rest of your lifetime. If you retire at 65 and live, to life expectancy at, say, 87, that's 8,000 days to live in retirement. So it's important to outline what you may need and when, since your age often dictates when you'll have access to certain government benefits and income too. Third, let's discuss your retirement income needs, wants, and wishes. Differentiating between them is going to be critical. So we'll go through that, because that will help structure how you recreate your paycheck, how we assess some of the income resources and savings that can match those different categories. Fourth, we'll do some actual planning, right? There's no room for just quick napkin math, I'll say, at this stage of your life. A lot of assumptions need to be made. Let's talk about how we can make them confidently, how we can build in some buffers for uncertainty later in life or unexpected emergencies or opportunities. Fifth, we'll come all the way back to the present and develop a plan for accumulation, savings to keep you on target. And then the last part of that process, let's talk about investment risk and return. There's really no magic formula here. In fact, we suggest allocating assets into different buckets with different objectives over different periods of time to make the retirement plan work. So we'll go through that too. All right, well, let's get started. Step one. What's retirement going to mean to you? It's more than just numbers. As I mentioned earlier, it's about feelings and emotions that can come with this very significant change in your routine, in socialization, and how you spend your time. So before we get into the math and talk about savings and inflation and taxes and Social Security and all that fun stuff, consider your vision for retirement. If you have 168 hours a week, how are you going to spend them now? What's the most important part of that retirement? How do you see things changing over time? Spending habits. What do you believe will be your biggest challenges? And you can see some of these survey results from a recent survey done by Edward Jones for what's most important to retirees. So there's a couple questions here that are going to help you define your retirement, but then also pay attention to the time horizon. I think it's easy, I'll share, for some people to define what they're going to do in what we'll call the honeymoon phase, the first couple days or years of retirement. But what about day 4,500 or day 8,000? Instead of planning for retirement as if it's one single stage, it may be beneficial to reframe that conversation to reflect different challenges that occur as people age over different periods of time. So there's different ways to walk you through that process, but I think it's really important to just recognize that retirement planning can start and should start with your vision. Second, let's define your time horizon, right? Identify some of those age milestones or financial milestones in your life. And that starts with, when will you begin transitioning? When will you stop saving is maybe the better way to put it, because many retirees decide to first scale back. Maybe they're going part-time at work. Maybe they're moving into something like consulting. Maybe they're volunteering time. Hence, they're going to ease into retirement via transition period. That's far more common now, where they're going from full-time to not just flipping a switch from being full-time to fully retired. So will that be you? What does your time horizon look like? And how long do you anticipate that kind of honeymoon phase of retirement lasting? There are also important milestones that we could put on here based on age and when you'll have access to certain savings and income. For example, if you're going to be one of those retirees that does it a little bit younger, maybe before the age of 59 and a half, are you going to have access to your retirement savings without tax penalties prior to that age? Social Security is not available under most circumstances until you're age 62. And even then, you receive a reduced payout for early election. So does it behoove you to wait? Is there a reason to collect on somebody else's benefits, prior relationships, or unfortunately, if someone passed away before you? We help our clients kind of assess how they can maximize those benefits. Think about other financial milestones. Carrying a mortgage into retirement is still fairly common. When is that going to be paid off? That may be your biggest outflow. So it's important to kind of think about and work through the end of that obligation. And if you're going to have it in retirement, how you're going to continue to pay that bill. Do you have a pension? If you do, there are usually rules on when that can begin. Are there good financial reasons to start benefits early or later? So think about your timeline, not only when this process is going to begin for you, but again, what are those other milestones, age or financial, on your timeline here that are going to affect this plan? Next, we need to start to answer how you're going to recreate that paycheck. So it's our job to help you assess what I'll say as both sides of the equation: your income needs but also your income resources. So let's start on the right. First, take assessment of the sources of income because there might be several for you. Will you still be earning in some capacity? Again, part-time work is not uncommon as people kind of phase into retirement. What will your Social Security paychecks look like? Is there a pension? Do you have other sources of income that may come into you? Rental income if you own multiple properties. Think of all those resources that will not require you to tap into savings or investment account. So the reality is, again, that many people don't have a pension anymore. So their fixed income may be really just Social Security. And that, of course, in itself may not be enough to support your retirement. So what we're trying to identify here is that gap of savings needed. So we need to figure out to what degree you're going to need savings to produce the income that you need. And that's moving to the left. And this should maybe look, if you've heard of it, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There are 4 different categories that we would break your income needs into. First, starting on the bottom, I do like the word needs. These are the basic expenses of your retirement, the bills that are not going to go away. The housing expenses, healthcare bills. Think about food, clothing, taxes, utilities. These are essential to you. They'll probably be somewhat consistent throughout retirement, so it makes sense to have a consistent income stream to cover those expenses. Next, we do want to separate out from the essential expenses that are the must-haves to cover these nice-to-haves or wants. We can call them maybe lifestyle expenses. These are things you want to do, but you can live without from time to time if necessary. We'll describe these as things like entertainment, travel, shopping, your habits. Maybe that's golf, eating out, spoiling grandkids, whatever that is to you. The key here is to build a suitable investment or withdrawal plan to access these savings from time to time when you want to cover them, regardless of market fluctuations. Third, we like to build in buffers to these plans. There's only 2 sure things in life, taxes and dying. For everything else, we really need to plan for the certainty of uncertainty over time. So as we discuss healthcare, long-term care, legal liabilities, emergencies, opportunities, the key here is to build in those buffers and understand your risks to decide how or if you want to address them before they actually occur and the choice is gone. And then last, we want to consider the pie in the sky expenses for you. Maybe that's specific crazy wishes or that we hope will happen. Maybe it's a legacy that you want to leave with any pour over money from your first 3 buckets. So long and short, the objective here is to identify that gap between your income needs, wants, wishes, and your income resources. And in doing so, think about how that gap may change over time, because that gap now is going to inform step 4, the amount of money you should have in savings to make up the difference in any given year. So let's jump there. We like to call this, what's your number? What is the lump sum savings that you will need? This is the math part of the equation, right? After defining those needs and finding that gap, your number is going to be what you need to have saved in order to confidently retire. And that number certainly needs to then factor in other assumptions on how things may change over time. Inflation, this is where it comes in. It's a very real risk in retirement, especially when some of those fixed income resources, such as Social Security and pensions, don't have the same cost of living adjustments, right? So I say you can't fall into the trap of doing simple napkin math, because changes in living expenses will change over time. The further away those expenses, the more margin of error. And those inflation rates can be different on different expenses. For example, a gallon of milk may go up by 2.5% yearly, but healthcare may go up 6.5%. So we have to consider that, the real life effect of inflation. Also, change in rate of return and performance on investments could vary greatly from year over year. So we don't want to fall into that danger either, where we're just illustrating straight line returns. Your rate of withdrawal matters too. We're going to talk about that in a second, but you need to trust kind of the number geeks like me that have done the extensive research over time to suggest that there's a safe withdrawal rate out there, usually between 4 and 5%. That means that you may need to be saving more than you think, based on the fact that you don't want to be eating the geese that are laying your golden eggs early in retirement, or you forego all the eggs that goose might have eaten later in life. And we need to consider taxes too, right? Taking out $100,000 from a retirement account that you have to pay income taxes on is not going to yield the same after-tax cash flow for you as taking $100,000 out of the bank, for example. So not all lump sum savings needs are equal. So there are some sophisticated planning tools and calculators out there, but we want to be sure that we identify what that lump savings is for you. We get in that ballpark, and that we make sure that we are assessing that over time as well, as some of the variables need to change. With that lump sum kind of identified, right? Let's quick review. You've identified your time horizon. You've identified your needs and resources. We're now identified the lump sum savings that's going to take to support that income over time. What we need to do is come back to the here and now and develop that accumulation plan. What are you setting aside out of your paycheck? What's accumulating in your bank account? Excess that you're not saving. What's being set aside on your behalf by an employer plan or matched through a company retirement plan? Based on the math you just determined, and this idea of a 4% rule being a safe withdrawal rate, are you on pace for that or not? And that gives you the opportunity then to make these adjustments and kind of understand the trade-offs. As we talked about, Social Security can't be the only thing that you're going to have. So whether that's building a cash reserve, whether that's building money in an employer plan, a non-retirement account, health savings account, other types of retirement accounts like a Roth IRA, what we're looking to do is help you understand the trade-offs that may be necessary right now to make the math work. Knowing what to expect as much as we can predict, we think is kind of half the battle in seeking a confident retirement. So the earlier you can know how much you need to save to get there, the better for you, because then as things change for you, let's say bonuses or pay raises occur, or mortgage payoffs happen, or you're empty nesting now, those are pivot points in life that can make for great opportunities to increase savings and put you on the path that you want to be on. And I'd say lastly here, review those calculations over time again, right? It's not a straight line. Returns and savings and investments, greater than anticipated returns mean that maybe you could be saving less, but it can go the other way too. Less than anticipated returns may mean you up your savings a little bit. The rule of 72 is on this slide. That basically says dividing your rate of return into 72 tells you how long it will take for your money to double, right? For example, a 7% annual rate of return into 72 means your money can double every 10 years. So this all depends on how much time you have, but the earlier you can develop this plan, set a savings habit, and adjust it over time to keep you on track, the better. This saving step in the process should also include not just how much to save, but where, right? So without going into great detail here, it really depends on your tax plan and retirement time horizon. But you really should consider diversifying your retirement savings from a tax perspective, just like you would diversify your investments. It's very common. Many default to bucket number 2 here, saving into pre-tax employer plans. That's where you get maybe a company match, or you just really like the idea of adjusting your gross income down, getting tax deductions. But there may be other options for you that will help you control your tax liability when it comes time to create your own retirement paycheck. Right? If you're going to need to get to money before age 59 and a half, you may want to have money in that taxable bucket. If you qualify, maybe you want to be saving into a Roth IRA in bucket 3, for example. So it's really important, again, to just have different accounts that may be accessible over different periods of time and have different tax consequences, so that when you do recreate that paycheck, you may not, right? The rules are there. You can't control how much you're taxed based on those different rules, but you may be able to control when. All right, the final step in our process is determining what an appropriate allocation is for you, for your investments. And that's based on assumptions on the rate of return that you need over time and the amount of risk that you're comfortable taking. So we suggest a couple different approaches within this variable of your planning, but first I'll say shoot low on your assumptions. Right? Psychologically, most of our clients become more conservative in their thought process with investments as they age. Simply put, once those paychecks stop and your ability to save ends and your resources now feel finite, they have to last the rest of your life, the less apt you are to take risk, right? Hence, our clients tend to be a little bit more protective against market losses in this phase of life. So use a more conservative rate of return in your assumptions. Second, regardless of your risk profile, consider this exercise of retirement planning as the determining factor for what rate of return you actually need to be making, right? If you're ahead of schedule in reaching your lump sum, again, maybe you can scale back some of your risk in your portfolio and increase your likelihood of staying on target. If you've still got plenty of time before retirement, and even though you feel a little risk adverse, maybe this exercise is an opportunity to see the value in seeking greater growth, right? Because you have time on your side. The point is, investing is emotional, but the longer period of time you have, the greater opportunity to participate in market growth. And as part of this process, then we like to consider a bucketing strategy. So we'll share that now, that purposes certain savings towards different retirement needs over different periods of time with different risk profiles, right? In short, let's go back to that idea of figuring out the gap between your income need and income resources. We believe that cash and cash equivalents are an okay thing to have for retirement, and would suggest anywhere from 1 to 2 years of that gap, right? So if the difference between your income need and income resources, let's say it's $30,000 a year, it's good to have 30 to 60,000 in cash savings in this bucket, because that's the money that you're going to need to be spending. And it's there for emergencies and opportunities, regardless of market movements, right? And why should we have that in cash? Because most market downturns last, you got it, 12 to 18 months, 1.5 to 2 years. So that gives you the permission to not have to worry about tapping into investments or selling investments at a bad time in the market. Take the market timing out of it. The second bucket we suggest filling with income producing assets. And that's the key to this bucket. It's income producing assets that produce the income that should be paid forward. We're not reinvesting those investments anymore. They're passed forward and replenishing what is being spent from the cash bucket, right? That could be in the form of interest, dividends. And why do we say putting 3 to 7 years worth of that income need in this bucket? Because most market cycles last, you got it, 3 to 7 years from peak to trough and back. So while the investments in this bucket are typically more conservative in nature, if they're paying you income, even if they fluctuate in value a bit, we believe you need not worry about the change in value of this investment because its main objective is to produce income over time. And even if stocks and the market, quote unquote, is feeling a little bit stressful or wonky or volatile, you have set up to 7 years worth of your income need covered in these first two buckets, which leads us to that last bucket, where we suggest, regardless of your risk tolerance, you consider investing for the long term, 7+ years from now. Just because you turned 62, 65, you're retired, doesn't mean you can't take risk anymore. We would say quite the opposite. You'll need these growth opportunities to keep up with inflation, right? So while our appetite for risk naturally goes down, we hope you've already covered short-term volatility psychologically by filling those first two buckets. You've given yourself, we hope, permission to tolerate that volatility because you don't need these growth-oriented investments anytime soon. You let them sit, they recover over time as they historically do. And most important is that these assets then, when they are performing well, you take the gains when they're available and you pass them forward. We like to think of this like a conveyor belt. When times are good, we sell our gains and buy more of the safe things. We don't leave all your chips on the table, and we let this engine on the back pass those gains forward during the good times and wait for them to recover in the bad. So as you consider building your retirement plan, I'll go back to where I started this presentation. Keep your goals and personal perspective front of mind, right? Your plan is going to be very different than your neighbor, your friend, your family member. How you think and feel about markets and economy and money is important. Markets are going to change. Economies are going to change. Our life consistently changes. News is abundant and cheap and can certainly play with our emotions. So have the plan, stick to it, track it over time so that you can adapt, but always through the lens of your goals and needs. We'd also say seek out tools and resources that are available. We have plenty on our website. They're going to help you with the math associated with planning, and consider those different scenarios and change your assumptions. Run this calculation a couple different times in a couple different ways with different variables, to make sure that you're still feeling confident about what can happen for you. I would finish by saying retirement planning, it can be simple, but we know it's not easy, because it is going to be a journey. It's not a sprint. Yes, there are a lot of variables to consider and there's a lot of data, but we hope this 6-step process allows you to have the proper conversations broken down with the proper people in your life to make sure it feels less stressful. And we certainly hope it leads to increased confidence. So thank you for joining us. We hope this was helpful.